Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Before we get started with the actual video, I have a small apology to make. When I was recording the actual unboxing of this kit, I forgot to double check the depth of setting for the focus on my webcam. It has defaulted back to a much longer depth of field, which means that the actual sprues and things are slightly out of focus in this video. I am very sorry, hopefully you stay and watch the video all the same. If not, I completely understand. It will be something I fix for the future. But yes, very sorry. And with that, I hope you stay around. Onto the video. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Age of Warhammer. My name is Valhamma. Today got something slightly different to the content I've done so far for the channel. I got my first unboxing video, rather than a book review. And we're starting with a fantastic kit that I've been really looking forward to for a very long time, even back to when it was announced a couple months ago. It's something I've kind of always hoped they would go back and do with a lot of the Heresy vehicles, is make them in full plastic kits, and obviously we're now starting to see them come through with the Sakaran and the Contemptor. And next up in the line is the Deimos Predator. This is the kind of archetypical light main battle tank for the Astartes legions, backed up by the Sakaran and the Kratos. It's a beautiful, beautiful box. Really nice bit of artwork on the front with it as a Sons of Horus Predator with Sons of Horus Marines in the background. On the back gives you some painting advice as they normally do, so you've got Sons of Horus and Imperial Fists labelled with the paint choices. Again, the high level paint choices doesn't give you much detail in the way of method or kind of what they've specifically used and where, but it's handy as a kind of guide to get you through your shopping list of paints. Transfer sheets included as well, the standard one we're seeing with all of these new kits for Imperial Fists and Sons of Horus. And a list of the options you get in terms of the tank itself. So you have the autocannon heavy bolter sponsons, you have options for the turret gun in terms of the graviton cannon, the turret mounted gravis las cannon, and the Volkite macro Seika. And then some sponson weapons options, you've got the heavy flame of the Volkite culverin or the las cannon as your options on there. Obviously there are some options in the army list, particularly for the turret weapons, that aren't included in this kit. I anticipate we'll probably get a secondary weapons kit, similar to the Contemptor. Possibly another full kit with some extra hull options to have some variety in how you can build your tanks and make them look unique on the battlefield. But I suspect a weapons kit or even a Forge World resin turret kit is probably more likely going forward. So let's open the box up and have a quick look and see what we get. So as you can see, it comes in the standard sleeve box that GW started using. It slides straight out of the overarching art box. There's not a huge number of sprues to make up this kit. I was a little bit surprised. I thought it would end up with a bit more to it. That's not a complaint by any means at all. I think these will be really nice kits to put together. I think they'll be quite quick to assemble. Starting off, you basically have a single sprue with all of your turret weapon options. If I move that box out of the way, you can get a better look at it. So we've got the autocannon on there, the Volkite macro Seika, the las cannons, and the grav weapon there. Given that all of these weapons are on a single sprue, I think it reinforces the idea that we might see a secondary sprue like this with the missing options on it. And that would make the most sense to me if I were GW looking at doing this. There are a few kind of single bits that you would need multiple of if you were to build this to be flexible and be magnetized. I think looking at the instructions briefly, you can get away with magnetizing this kit fairly easily, but you do only get one of the gun shields, for example, so you need to be a bit careful and plan ahead when you're planning to magnetize. Make sure you're going into this kit knowing that ahead of time. Moving on to the next sprues, so we've got the top hull and the turret. I love the dome turret for the Mark I Predator. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful design. It mimics things like the glaive and the fellblade. Really makes it feel like a Heresy kit. Again, this is very much a unique Predator sprue. This is clearly something that's above and beyond the Rhino kit, which makes up the majority of the core of the kit. You've got the side panels for the sponson weapons that replace the side doors on the Deimos Rhino, the new top plate with the turret ring that doesn't include the top two doors, and then the turret ring itself, and then the reinforced front glacis, which you don't get with the Rhino. It has the two split fronts instead of the single battle tank style design. Then you've got the cupular ring at the top there for the commander cupula. and a few other kind of small bits that just kind of help fit the whole thing together. Next up we have some sponson weapons. So these are again pretty much on a single sprue. So you've got the Volkite culverins, the las cannons, the heavy bolters, and the flamers are in various kind of broken down bits, and then the 2 turret rings to make sure they can still move, as well as the mounting rings there as well. So everything's been split down into very specific sub-sprues, which is quite cool. I think it gives GW the most flexible way of selling these kits, particularly when they are built on a Rhino chassis. Clearly a lot of design for manufacturing work went into these and splitting down what's important on each sprue. I think they've done a really nice job with it. I think it works really well. And we have the now fairly ubiquitous tank accessory sprue. We've seen this in a few other kits as well. Things like the various pintle weapons, the heavy bolter, the heavy flamer, the multi-melter, the combi weapon options are on here as well as the final cupular ring, the gunner pieces, the commander pieces, and the dozer blade as well are all on this sprue. Again, some really nice options in here for either conversions or for characters. So a lot of the gunner and commander pieces you can use across different models. I used some from the Spartan kit from the AOD box set to make a Master of Signals up quickly. I'm sure a lot of people will end up doing this and keeping the hatches closed, but the option's there if you wanted someone out the top hatch as well. And then finally, if anyone has built one of the Deimos Rhinos, this sprue will be very familiar to them. It's the largest sprue in the box. It's the standard Rhino piece, so it's the 2 side panels, the tracks, the bottom hull, and the back door, basically, and the exhausts. So this is the fundamental Rhino sprue that everything is built on, but everything else, other than the tank accessory sprue, is a specific Predator piece. I really like what they've done with the redesign on the tracks, by making them kind of butt-ended, where it joins in underneath the armor plating. It means you can very easily build this tank with the tracks separately and then slide them into place up under the armor without worrying it going too far. There are dead ends. If you look on it's on the back of this one here, where the tracks would line up to, there are these little end catchment points, which means that you can't push the track all the way into the vehicle. It will stop dead at the correct point, so it makes doing it as a sub-assembly and dry brushing the tracks without getting any paint on the tank hull super simple. It's a really nice touch. It's a very simple touch from a CAD and manufacturing design perspective, but it just works really well. And even with the added thickness, you've got no sink marks or kind of issues on the moulding on the outside face either. The only final thing to cover really is the instruction booklet, so I'll very quickly pull that out and people can have a look. Standard A4 design that we're doing for all the new tanks, and again split hull, same as the Rhino, just with the added kind of side plate there for the sponsons, same bottom hull, same back door, same armor plating, same interior door, which, let's be honest, most people are going to glue the back door shut and not paint, but the option is there for you if you want the interior detail. It is an entirely detailed interior hull as well, in case anyone is keen. Predator top plate, tracks all the way around, although most people, as I say, will leave them off. The interesting one for me is this front piece here. So there's 2 bits of armour that cover the front tracks, and they come as standard with the locator lugs for the spotlights. The spotlights are obviously an optional upgrade, especially in Heresy. They're 5 points per model, but they actually have very specifically in the instructions instructions to cut them off if you don't want them. I'm not aware of having seen that on many GW kits before, about people being actively encouraged to modify the kit if they don't want those components. It's a little thing. I think that's quite cool. It gives owners and players a bit of option. It means that they're not left with these weird lugs on the front of their tank. But for a newer hobbyist who wouldn't necessarily think to remove them, you've now got kind of instructions and briefs to say, if you don't want spotlights, just don't put the spotlights on. If you were particularly clever and you wanted the options, you could put magnets on the back of these components here, and as long as your location for the magnets, and if you used square magnets, you should be able to then take the spotlights on and off depending on if you want that modularity in game. For the sake of 5 points, I think most people will just commit one way or the other. Turret weapons, again, there's not a huge number of components that go into these. The turret ring, the top hatch, the top dome, and then the cupola. And then the cannons themselves are made up of maybe 4 or 5 components across the board. depending on which build you've got a few different options around targeting lenses, or which housing you use, and which kind of ammo bin or kind of energy source fits on the back. So the Seikar has its own unique one, as does the Graviton, but the las cannons and the auto cannons share the same bins on the back of the tank. And then all the various options and sponsor weapons as well. List them all out in order. They're fairly simple. It's the same kind of twist-on mechanism we've seen so far on things like the Sakaran and Spartan sponsons. Again, really nice little design. As long as they're free from paint, the friction should be enough to hold them on there. So if you did, for example, manage to source some extra sponsons, you could then swap them in and out fairly quickly. And then finally, all of the various and many options in how to personalise and customise your tank in the top hatch area. So you've got the Pintle combi weapon, either combi bolter, primary bolter, secondary bolter, or flamer melter, plasma gun, or Volkite charger. Havoc launcher, multi-melter, all the same options we've seen for the Spartan, as well as a closed hatch option, a gunner option, a commander option. So if you're doing an armoured breakthrough list, you might want to have the commander as the one that's up in the cupula. So really nice to see the level of detail and options they're putting onto these extra sprues. I think it's a really beneficial element to the modelling side of the Heresy. I think it plays well to a lot of the more experienced hobbyists who might want to convert up a few of their existing tanks. And some nice nostalgia touches as well to things like the resin Forge World tank commanders they used to sell, particularly with these two models down here. And the option to have shoulder pads on or off, but have detail on the shoulder underneath the shoulder pad. Because, as we know, the shoulder pads for a Space Marine don't really fit through the tank hatch, so it's a nice touch to not have to include them. It's very cool. So everyone, that is the Predator in kit form. Some more options in terms of the additional searchlight, smoke launchers, and hunter killer as well, if you wanted to jazz up your tank a bit more. I think I'll probably be taking searchlights on all my tanks, at least one per squadron, purely for the sake of night fight. I think that's going to be a key part of the game going forward, so I don't really want to have my tanks doing nothing for a turn because I didn't pay 5 points. Other than that, that's it for the base kit, and we'll come back in a minute with it built up so you can see the build kit. Back to the build kit though, it's a really nice kit to put together. As I say, it took me about 2 hours all told in terms of clipping, cleaning and gluing. It would be very, very easy to magnetise a lot of the components of this tank. I chose not to, purely because I have a very specific goal in mind for my tank. I want it to be a Imperial Fist gunboat, fundamentally, is what I want it to be. So in terms of the actual construction itself, it's basically the standard Rhino chassis with additional side plating in the top, as we showed you on the sprue release. I've included a couple of the optional extras like the smoke launchers on the back here and the spotlight on the front here. There are loads of bits I haven't used. The kind of the upgrade sprue, and that's just the sponson weapons bits that are left in the dozer blade. Loads of bits left on there. Obviously I've not glued the tracks on just yet because I want to paint them separately. As I mentioned on the kit review, on the inside of here and on the back end there are blockers, so you can only push the tracks in so far, so it makes assembling the tracks after the fact a really simple process to do. Everything that can move still does, as far as I'm aware, so things like the side sponsons here, they pivot. And the same lock-in system we've seen on things like the Spartan previously as well. The tolerances were great. It was a really, really easy kit to put together. The only bit that I found was slightly tricky. There are some very, very tight tolerances on the base plate going into the two side panels, particularly on this back edge here, so I had to trim the tab down a little bit to get it to fit. I was pushing really quite hard to get it to sit right. I don't know if that's just my kit or something for all the kits, but something to be aware of when you're building this. The other one was the back hatch. The pegs that fit the back hatch into the side of the tank. Again, quite a tight tolerance there. It doesn't pivot very easily. You'd want to get some sanding boards, memory boards, and just give that a bit of a once over just to trim it down. If you wanted the back hatch to be opening, because yeah, once I put the sides together, it basically locked the door in a slightly open position. So I've had to tag the inside of it. You can see the frosting in there from the super glue to tack it in place while the plastic glue dried and sealed the whole thing shut. Not ideal, but very much a me problem and a minor concern at best. The turret itself went together really nicely. Again, magnetising this wouldn't be too difficult. This front glacis plate here, the gun shield, just behind that is the internal kind of mounting point that allows the turret to move vertically. That's the point I would magnetise at. A lot of these components here are bespoke to each of the individual long guns, so you should be able to magnetise at that point behind the gun shield and be able to swap out at least 2 or 3 of the options fairly easily. In terms of cupular weapon, I went for the heavy bolter because Imperial Fists, and I want as much decent firepower as I can get out of them. Really nice bit to put together, just sits on the front cupula there, you can see. But yeah, all in all, this was a really nice kit to build. Thank you again to Games Workshop for sending it through to the channel to have a crack at. I'm going to really look forward to getting this painted up for the fists and get it on the table soon. Thank you everyone, and hope to see you in the next video.